And joining me now to discuss the situation in Gaza further is Murat Bilhan. He's the Deputy President of the Turkish Asian Center for Strategic Studies, and Chaim Levinson, who is a political correspondent at Haaretz in Israel. Let's begin with you, Chaim. You've just come from Israel. How big of a deal is what is happening currently in Gaza for the Israeli government?
It's not a big of a deal, but I think it's a concern. People are looking forward to the 15th of May. It's supposed to be the Nakba Day. And one day after, the United States Embassy will be opened in Jerusalem. And the government of Israel is looking to this date, and they see as this latest Friday's demonstration as a practice to the big day and the 15th of May.
So it is a concern. You're saying it might not be a big deal. What role do you think the Israeli government and the Israeli state have played in what we are seeing in Gaza today?
Look, the situation in Gaza is very complicated because Gaza is squished between Israel and Egypt, putting a very heavy pressure on Gaza, and the economy in Gaza is collapsing, and they have maybe on the breach of a humanitarian crisis. But I think also we need to look at the role of Hamas that is leading Gaza, and the responsibility as what's happening in Gaza is their problem, and they decided to declare war on Israel, of course, and to have some fights with Egypt. So the consequences is also on the Hamas government, who causes the suffer to the people of Gaza.
But just for the benefit of our viewers, you talk about Hamas and its responsibility. Gaza is choked, isn't it? From the Egyptian side, from the sea, from Israel. So there's no way in or out.
It's true, but a sovereign country is supposed to have a good relationships with their neighbors in order to promote their economy. It's true to Israel, it's true to Turkey, it's true to the United States. You cannot declare war on your neighbors and then complain that your economy choked.
Is Gaza sovereign?
It's partially sovereign. It's controlled by Hamas. It's not controlled by Israel.
It doesn't have any control over its borders. It doesn't have any control over its trade or what gets in and out.
Israel controls the airspace and also the sea, but the borders, they control the Israeli borders. Every country has borders. Turkey also has borders.
So you think Gaza is partially sovereign? Come on.
Look, if the Hamas government wants to improve the situation in Gaza, they can start a negotiation with the Israeli government, stop the military process in Gaza, stop the missiles program, etc. And when you have peace with your neighbors, it's much more easily to go along. No.
You know what? I want to ask you a question, but I want to bring in Murat here as well. Let's take off that point. Is Gaza sovereign?
No, it's not sovereign. It's part of Palestine. If we consider it, we in Turkey consider Palestine as a state, and we recognize it as a state, and therefore Gaza is a part of that. But unfortunately, there's no direct connection with.
A lot of countries, over 100 countries recognize Palestine as a sovereign state, but Palestine, the West Bank at least, is still occupied by Israel. And, in fact, what I want to get to, and Chaim, you've been covering this issue for a long time as well, I want to get your attention to how the media covers it or portrays this conflict. And I want to bring in a quote from Hamid Dabashi. He recently wrote, "When it comes to slaughter of Palestinians, the BBC cameras and words are standing right behind the Israeli soldiers." Tell us about the coverage of Gaza, and do you think there has been a skewed coverage, at least as far as the BBC is concerned?
Everything is a narrative coverage, and everyone has his own point of view, and you can cover many issues around the world with a different narrative, but I think it's exaggerating when you use the word slaughter. I don't think it's an appropriate word in a very objective eyes. There were clashes. If you can ask me if Israeli can kill less people, I agree with you. Israel can kill less, but no.
Clashes, you use the word clashes, but clashes is almost between two equals. If you and I get in a ring and we spar off, that might be a clash, but you're talking about a people who are protesting against one of the most sophisticated armies in the world.
No one forced the people in Gaza to come to the border. That every country has a border in the world and protest. Most of them peacefully, but some of them violently. And when you have a huge protest, I'm sure every country in the world, when you have a hostile entity, sends thousands of people to the border to demonstrate. I'm sure every country in the world will take the same steps, and I must tell you, even much harder steps.
Fire live shots into the crowd.
It wasn't the firing of live shots to the crowd like someone was spraying like this to the crowd. It was a sniper target. So I agree with you. By the way, I don't like to kill people. I think that if the Israeli government, but if the Israeli government can kill less people, I think it's more important. But if you look in the world point of view, come on, you see what steps other countries doing in order to protect their borders from terrorism. I see what Turkey is doing now in Syria in order to protect their borders. So
You're comparing the situations
not,
together, which is interesting.
No, not every situation is similar, but I don't see that. I didn't see that the Turkish government is, like we say, vegetarian when it comes to terrorism and protecting borders.
This is, I want to get to another point, and I want to probably bring both of you in. We saw in the wake of what happened in Gaza and all these disagreements between the Turkish President Erdogan and the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, there was quite a visible play out. First, we had a tweet come in from, Erdogan made a statement. The Israeli Prime Minister responded. I don't need lectures from someone like President Erdogan. How did this play out, and how does that affect the relationship between Israel and Turkey? Murat, I'll begin with you.
Well, first of all, I would like to just underline my wish that in this last demonstration, the Israeli government forces will not use excessive force, because excessive force inevitably triggers angry wordings from all over the world, with the exception of the very few friends of Benjamin Netanyahu. So therefore, I mean, the majority and minority are obviously clear. Now, what I would like to underline is that I would not like to go into polemics with neither of the two leaders. I mean, because they are angry speakers, both of them. So I would not like to share the same language with them. But I would like to stress one point, and that is the difference between anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism. They are two different concepts. Anti-Semitism is wrong because it's against the people, ethnical hatred, which I do not adore, I do not accept. Whereas Zionism is an ideology. It's the founding ideology of the Israeli state. And then later, it just, wanted to expand Israel's territory. And it did indeed, to some extent. So this second ideology is unacceptable for me.
I want to pivot off what you're saying to what Mohammed bin Salman, the Saudi Crown Prince, he recently gave an interview to the US press, and he says, I believe the Palestinians and the Israelis have the right to have their own land. Going off what you're saying, the founding principle of Israel, you're against, as are many people. Anti-Semitism, you say, is absolutely wrong. Mohammed bin Salman is now coming out and he says that he believes in the right of, that Jews and Israelis deserve a homeland. How do you view all of this, Chaim?
Look, Mohammed bin Salman is continuing the statement of the Saudi Arabia and the 2002 summit, what we call the Saudi Initiative. That is the state of Palestine, the right of return, and also a Jewish state next to it. But he is taking it a step further. I think it's very important to him to have been perceived as close to the West. He worked together with the United States. He has some kind of connections with Israel, but still, if you look in the last 4 years, the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu speaks about new aerial opportunities, but the Saudi Arabia is not willing to have any kind of public connection with Israel without solving the Palestinian issue. And I look at what he said as an invitation to solve the problem.
And going back to what Murat Bey said, that trading barbs or accusations in such an environment.
Look, about President Erdogan and the Israeli government, I think since 2008, President Erdogan, even he had a very good relationship with Israel, pivoted to a very harsh rhetoric war against Israel. But I can tell you, I asked a very high official, Israeli official, did it have any kind of influence about the real relationship? He told me no, the economic relationship is continuing. And I must tell you, I came today from Tel Aviv. There are 10 flights a day between Tel Aviv and Istanbul. People are coming from Tel Aviv to Istanbul. People coming from the other side. There's a cultural relationship, economical relationship. And it will be helpful if the two leaders will also stop with this war of words, because it doesn't help.
So is it all about optics then, Murat, as Chaim is saying, that the relationship, Israeli-Turkish relationship, is now actually improving since the Mavi Marmara days? How big of an issue then is Gaza?
No, I mean, first of all, in Gaza there is great injustice. As in the beginning of our conversation, it was mentioned that Gaza was encircled with the sea, with Israel, and with Egypt. Now, this small strip of land is helpless. I mean, they are just helplessly trying to push their words for the Palestinian state. Now, this, I think there's great injustice being made to the Palestinian people. What I would like to mention is that both Israel, since its founding days, and Palestinians have rights, full rights, to have their states, independent states, to live side by side. So I believe in the formal solution of a two-state solution, although Israel rejects it. Now, Israel,
well, in principle, Israel doesn't reject it. Israel says it's still committed to the two-state solution, but then settlement expansion and all of that goes against it.
Yeah. Well, then, of course, there's nothing left for the Palestinians in their own land.
And especially Jerusalem as the capital. You're talking about the Nakba. These things are coming to an end. Chaim Levinson, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Murat Bey, thank you.
Thank you.